Welcome to the Book Nook. We are so glad you're here today.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
So, let me ask you something directly. Do you keep procrastinating on important jobs? Like, do you feel constantly restless or maybe just entirely unable to focus?
I mean, we've all been there, right? Putting off your absolute biggest life goals just to organize your digital files again.
Yes. Or checking your emails for the 10th time before noon or grabbing, just one more coffee.
Always the coffee?
Right. And if you are nodding your head right now, you are experiencing what we call an invisible mental barrier.
Because, I mean, usually when we talk about physical obstacles, there is a clear expectation of visibility.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you need to cross a rushing river, you see the water, you engineer a steel bridge, and you cross it. The problem is tangible.
It's right there in front of you.
But when you step into the world of human productivity and our own psychology, that visibility just completely vanishes.
It totally disappears. You're just sitting at your desk, staring at a blank document that you absolutely need to finish.
And it feels like there is a 1,000-pound concrete wall between you and the keyboard.
It is the absolute definition of an invisible mental barrier.
Ah.
You know exactly what you need to do. You possess the skills to do it.
The timeline is totally clear.
Yeah, and yet you are completely and utterly paralyzed. The rational part of your brain is screaming at you to just start typing, but your body it refuses to comply.
And it is so incredibly frustrating. So today, we are taking a really comprehensive deep dive into the underlying mechanics of this exact paralysis.
It's a big one.
It is. We are going to be exploring the concepts laid out in Thibaut Meurisse's work, Dopamine Detox, a short guide to remove distractions and get your brain to do hard things.
Such a powerful book.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the mission of this deep dive is to fundamentally understand why we feel so constantly distracted, and how our very own evolutionary biology is essentially being weaponized against us in the modern world.
Weaponized is the perfect word for it, honestly.
Right. And more importantly, we are going to outline a concrete, highly actionable method to reclaim our focus, to just end this state of constant overstimulation.
So we can finally get our brains to tackle the hard things we've been avoiding.
Yes. So to really understand why we behave the way we do, like why we choose scrolling on a phone for 3 hours over building a business or writing a book, we have to start with the fundamental biological mechanics.
Right. We have to unpack what is often called the misunderstood molecule, dopamine.
I am so glad we are starting here, because if you spend any time on the internet or reading self-improvement articles, you've heard of dopamine.
Oh, it's everywhere.
Pop culture has entirely co-opted this word. The general public understanding is that dopamine is the pleasure chemical.
Yeah, that's the standard narrative.
It's super simple, right? Yeah. You eat a piece of chocolate cake, you feel pleasure, so therefore that pleasure is dopamine. You get on a social media post, you feel a hit of joy, dopamine.
But the reality of the neuroscience paints a very, very different picture of what this molecule actually does.
It really does.
Because that pop culture definition, it's a fundamental misunderstanding. Dopamine is not a pleasure chemical.
Which blew my mind when I first read it.
Right. It is actually the neurotransmitter of anticipation and motivation.
Anticipation?
Yeah. From an evolutionary biology standpoint, its primary function is to make us anticipate rewards and drive us to act.
So it's the engine.
Exactly. Think back to our ancient ancestors on the savannah. Dopamine was the biological engine that gave them the relentless desire to take action.
To earn a reward that was strictly necessary for survival.
Or reproduction, yeah. Trekking 10 miles to hunt for nourishing food or the drive to find a mate. It is the force that makes us act. It is the craving itself.
Wow, so it is the feeling of wanting, not the feeling of liking.
That distinction is paramount. Simply because an event triggers the release of dopamine does not mean it is something we actually enjoy or get lasting pleasure from.
That explains so much.
And when you pay close attention to your own behavior, you will notice a fascinating, almost tragic detail about human psychology.
What's that?
As soon as you actually obtain the expected reward, you often feel incredibly empty and unfulfilled.
Oh, man. I can give a perfect, albeit slightly embarrassing example of this from my own life.
Let's hear it.
Okay, so you spend an hour endlessly scrolling through a streaming platform, right? Trying to find the absolute perfect movie to watch.
Oh, the endless scroll.
Yes. And the act of searching feels so urgent, so highly engaging. Your brain is telling you the perfect movie is just one more scroll away.
It's hyping you up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the moment you finally pick the movie, sit back, and hit play, you almost immediately lose interest.
Yeah.
10 minutes in, you were reaching for your phone again. The anticipation was thrilling, but the reward was completely hollow.
Hollow is a great way to put it. No amount of that kind of stimulation will ever bring a sense of lasting fulfillment.
That's crazy.
And that is a perfect illustration of what we call the molecule of more, because dopamine is fundamentally about anticipating a reward. It creates this insidious self-reinforcing loop. Yeah, when you continuously trigger the release of dopamine through highly stimulating activities, your brain actually attempts to maintain homeostasis.
Which is like a biological balance, right?
Right. And it does this by reducing the number of active dopamine receptors. This process is called downregulation.
Downregulation.
You actually build up a physical tolerance to that stimulation.
Oh, wow. So just like building calluses on your hands from lifting weights, your brain builds a callus against the stimulation.
Exactly like a callus. And as a result of that tolerance, you need stronger and stronger stimuli to experience that exact same sensation of anticipation or motivation.
You just constantly want more.
You want more, and you are never fully satisfied. Your baseline just shifts.
I mean, this mechanism completely explains why this isn't just about the classic substance addictions we typically think of, like drugs or alcohol.
Oh, absolutely not.
The neurological mechanism is exactly the same for behavioral addictions.
Totally the same.
If the brain is just responding to peaks in dopamine and downregulating receptors, it honestly doesn't matter if the trigger is a chemical substance or a specific behavior.
The behavioral triggers can be just as potent. We are talking about activities like gambling, compulsive shopping, obsessive thoughts, even rumination.
Rumination, that's a huge one.
Right. Extreme exercise, video games, and even chronic overworking.
Overworking as an addiction.
Yeah. If you find that you cannot spend a single day without engaging in a certain activity, without feeling agitated, anxious, or just profoundly bored, you have likely built a tolerance.
You literally require that specific behavioral hit just to feel normal.
Exactly.
Okay, if I can try to visualize this mechanism, tell me if this makes sense. Dopamine is basically like the movie trailer, not the movie itself.
Ooh, I like that.
Right. The trailer's entire job is to hype you up. It shows you the best explosions, the funniest jokes. It gets your heart racing.
It physically motivates you to leave your house.
Exactly, to drive to the theater and buy a ticket. But once you are actually sitting in the theater, if the movie itself is a shallow, terribly written mess, you feel empty.
Because the trailer did its job flawlessly.
Yes, it motivated you to act, but it couldn't provide the actual satisfaction.
The dopamine is the trailer. The fulfillment is the actual quality of the film. And the problem arises when we spend our entire lives just watching trailers.
Oh, man. Just chasing that initial spike of anticipation.
Exactly, without ever sitting down to do the deep, fulfilling work.
Okay, I see the biological logic here, but I have to ask a foundational question.
Sure, go for it.
If dopamine is this highly evolved, incredibly successful evolutionary survival tool like the very mechanism that kept our ancestors alive, motivated them to forage, build shelters, survive against incredible odds,
Right.
why is it suddenly ruining our productivity? Why is an ancient survival mechanism suddenly the villain in the story of the modern knowledge worker?
It's a great question. And the answer is that the biological tool itself is not broken. It is functioning exactly as it was designed to function.
Real?
Yeah. What has changed radically and rapidly is the environment in which that tool operates.
The environment.
We have taken ancient survival-based circuitry designed for a world of extreme scarcity and placed it into a modern environment of infinite abundance.
Infinite abundance. Wow.
This is what we call the great hijacking. Your attention and your focus are highly scarce economic assets, and modern marketers, tech companies, and food engineers spend billions of dollars specifically to exploit this anticipation loop.
So the environment is literally weaponized against us.
It really is.
Let's look at the tech industry first, because our phones are, the most obvious delivery systems for this hijacking.
Without a doubt.
The specific design choices in our apps are not accidental, right? They are engineered to trigger dopamine without providing any actual survival benefit.
Consider the ubiquitous red notification badge.
Oh, I hate those.
We all do, but they work. That simple visual cue, a bright red dot, is an evolutionary trigger.
How so?
Well, in nature, red often signifies urgency or ripe fruit or danger. When you see it on your phone, it immediately triggers your brain to anticipate a reward or crucial information.
Wow. So you open the app simply because the dot is there.
Exactly, completely overriding your conscious intention.
And what happens when you open it? You check your emails, anticipating a message from a friend, or like exciting news.
Or you check your investment portfolio.
Right, or website traffic stats, anticipating the reward of encouraging numbers. But the real hook, according to the book, is the unpredictability.
Unpredictability is the core of intermittent reinforcement. It's the exact same psychological principle behind the slot machine.
Slot machine effect.
Yeah. When you pull down to refresh your social media feed, you don't know what you're going to get. It might be nothing.
Or it might be a highly controversial post that spikes your adrenaline.
Or a funny video. That variable reward schedule absolutely supercharges the dopamine release.
Because if you knew exactly what was going to be there every time, you would get bored.
Exactly. The mystery keeps you on the hook.
It creates this infinite scroll where you are continuously hunting for a reward that rarely ever comes, but the anticipation just keeps your thumb moving.
And tech companies know that the more time you spend on their platforms, the more advertising revenue they generate.
They are literally mining our attention by exploiting our dopamine circuitry.
They absolutely are.
Yeah.
But, technology is only one facet of this hijacking. The food industry provides an equally compelling illustration of this biological mismatch.
Food. Yes, let's talk about food. Because when we look at human history, hunger and the anticipation of finding food was the single biggest driver for action.
It was everything.
Yeah.
For our ancestors, finding highly nourishing food that contained dense calories, specifically sugar and fat, was incredibly rare.
Right.
So when they did find it, like a cache of honey or bone marrow,
Yeah.
the brain released a massive surge of dopamine.
To signal, like, remember exactly what you did to get this and do it again because this will keep us alive.
Precisely.
Professor Suzanne Klaus, a biologist at the German Institute of Human Nutrition, has pointed out that our craving for sweet foods is completely innate.
It's hardwired.
Yeah. It isn't a lack of discipline, it's a survival mechanism. Her research highlights that the specific combination of sugar and fat is unprecedented in its ability to stimulate the brain's reward system.
But today, we obviously don't live on the savannah. We live surrounded by supermarkets and 247 convenience stores.
So true.
The feeling of intense anticipation that drove our ancestors to exert massive physical effort to find calories is completely irrelevant now.
You don't have to track an animal for 3 days. You just walk down the street and buy a heavily processed donut.
Right, yet our biology hasn't updated. We still experience that massive survival-level surge of dopamine when presented with rich, sugary food.
And the food industry exploits this mismatch ruthlessly.
They really do.
They spend millions engineering products to hit what they call the bliss point.
The bliss point, yes.
Yeah. It's the exact ratio of sugar, salt, and fat that maximizes dopamine release. By hiding sugar in almost everything from bread to pasta sauce, they not only make the food hyper-palatable, but they manipulate our biology to make us crave more of it.
It's everywhere.
We're fighting billion-dollar engineering with mere willpower, which is, it's a losing battle.
It is a completely losing battle, and it raises a really important scientific debate regarding how we classify this manipulation. Like, is sugar literally addictive in the clinical sense?
Oh, that's a good question.
The scientific community is actually quite divided on the nuances of this.
Let's explore that division, because understanding the mechanics helps us figure out how to fight back. What are the different perspectives here from the sources?
Well, on one side of the debate, you have figures like Robert Lustig, who is a prominent professor of pediatrics.
Okay.
He strongly asserts that sugar is addictive. He points to how fructose is metabolized in the liver and how it drives metabolic syndrome. But more importantly, he argues that sugar blunts the brain's reward center, leading to a vicious cycle of consumption that mirrors addiction. He actually compares its addictive pull to something like nicotine.
Wow. So a strong chemical dependency model.
Yes.
What is the counter-argument to that?
The counter-argument focuses on the specific mechanisms of withdrawal and receptor hijacking. So Dr. Ziodine, a psychiatrist at Cambridge, clarifies that while the brain's reward system responds to sugar similarly to how it responds to drugs by releasing dopamine drugs of abuse, actively hijack and aggressively turn off the normal biological controls in a way that sugar does not.
Ah, I see.
Furthermore, Tom Sanders, a professor of nutrition and dietetics at King's College London, argues that we must differentiate between habit-forming behaviors and true chemical addiction.
Meaning, like, you might really want a cookie, but you aren't going to have physical tremors if you don't get one.
Precisely. Sanders notes that while liking sweet things is deeply habit-forming and can lead to behavioral dependence, individuals do not experience severe opiate-like physical withdrawal symptoms.
Like severe tremors, fevers, or bone pain.
Right, not when they just cut their sugar intake.
Yeah.
The biological mechanism of the craving is there, but the physiological withdrawal is vastly different.
That makes a lot of sense.
However, regardless of the strict clinical classification, the consensus is that reducing our intake to lower our behavioral dependence is highly advisable for both physical and mental focus.
Absolutely. So whether we are talking about the infinite scroll of social media, the notifications on our phones, or the hidden sugars in our food, the common denominator is that we are swimming in an ocean of instant, highly engineered gratification.
We really are.
We are being trained to expect an immediate reward for zero effort. And this constant conditioning leads to a profound consequence: the complete erosion of long-term thinking.
This is perhaps the most dangerous side effect of the overstimulated brain. Constant exposure to instant gratification fundamentally alters how we perceive time and value.
How we perceive time.
Yeah. Dr. Edward Banfield of Harvard University conducted this extensive research into the sociology of success. And after analyzing various socioeconomic groups, he concluded that a long-time perspective was the absolute most important determinant of financial and personal success in life.
Wow, the most important. How did he define a long-time perspective?
He defined it as the ability to think several years or even decades into the future while making decisions in the present moment.
Decades.
Yeah. It is the capacity to delay immediate comfort today for a much larger compound reward tomorrow.
Which is the exact opposite of what our digital environment trains us to do.
Exactly the opposite.
When you are constantly seeking the next 5-second dopamine hit from a short-form video, you are literally wiring your brain to reject long-term thinking.
You're training it to demand immediate returns.
Right. You are training your neural pathways to demand immediate returns on your attention. If a video doesn't hook you in 3 seconds, you swipe.
You just swipe away.
So how can a brain trained on 3-second intervals possibly sit down and write a novel that takes 2 years to finish?
It struggles immensely. I mean, to illustrate the power of long-term thinking, we can look at a historical business example that is almost unfathomable by today's hyperfast standards.
What's the example?
Amazon. Jeff Bezos founded Amazon in 1994, but the company did not have its very first profitable year until 2003.
That is nearly a decade of operations.
A decade.
A decade of investors screaming at him, the media calling it a failure, and the dot-com bubble bursting all around him.
Yep. In 2002, the year prior to finally turning a profit, Amazon reported a net loss of $149 million.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
Yeah.
In a culture that demands quarterly profits and immediate returns, Bezos held the line. He possessed an immense long-time perspective.
He really did.
He could have easily made a quick, short-term profit early on by stripping the company or compromising the customer experience, but he chose to reinvest heavily, delaying immediate gratification to build a massive foundation that would dominate for decades.
That requires a level of patience and emotional regulation that constant overstimulation actively destroys.
It totally destroys it.
Chamath Palihapitiya, a former senior executive at Facebook who later became very critical of the platform, has openly argued that social media apps literally wire your brain for super fast feedback.
Yeah, we are losing the cognitive endurance required to do anything difficult or meaningful.
And it goes beyond just impatience, doesn't it? This constant, super fast feedback loop forces us to adopt a completely distorted version of reality.
Oh, this is a crucial point. We scroll through our feeds and our brains process the information as reality, but it is a highly curated, statistically anomalous reality.
Yes, we only see the extreme outliers.
Exactly. We see the 22-year-old YouTuber who got rich quick.
Mm-hmm.
We see the fitness influencer with a genetically perfect body who claims it only takes a 10-minute workout.
We see the highlight reels.
Right. We do not see the thousands of failures, the years of invisible hard work, the bankruptcies, or the genetic lotteries.
Yeah. And because our overstimulated brains expect fast feedback and immediate rewards, we look at these overnight successes, we compare them to our own slow, messy lives, and we feel completely inadequate.
It leads to a very frantic, anxious culture.
The culture of hustling. We jump from one get-rich-quick scheme to another or one fad diet to another, frantically trying to catch up to an illusion rather than practicing patient, consistent daily action.
It's exhausting.
We adopt the wildly inaccurate mental model that success should come quickly and easily, and if it doesn't, We must be doing something fundamentally wrong.
It creates a frenetic race where we just forget the value of compound interest, both in finance and in skill acquisition. We believe we are constantly missing a secret life hack.
Which doesn't exist.
No, it doesn't. And it is very telling that Steve Jobs, the man who arguably architected the modern ecosystem of mobile distraction, famously banned his own kids from using iPads at home.
Wow, really?
Yeah. He intimately understood the destructive power of this fast feedback loop on the developing mind's ability to focus and delay gratification.
That is so telling. So, we have established the biological mechanism of dopamine, the molecule of anticipation. We have explored how modern technology and food industries have hijacked this system, creating tolerance and eroding our ability to think long-term.
We've covered a lot.
This brings us to the actual day-to-day reality of living inside a hijacked brain. Let's walk through the morning routine of an overstimulated person, because I think a lot of people will recognize this specific hamster wheel.
Oh, the hamster wheel begins the moment consciousness returns. You wake up. Before your feet have even touched the floor, you reach over to the nightstand and grab the phone.
Guilty. You check your emails to see if there are any urgent fires. You open a social media app, telling yourself it's just for a minute to wake up your brain.
Just for a minute.
Right. You scroll through the news and absorb 3 different global crises.
And before you have even brushed your teeth, showered, or eaten breakfast, you have subjected your brain to a massive influx of novel information, variable rewards, and extreme dopamine hits.
It's wild when you think about it.
You are profoundly overstimulated before the day has even officially begun.
And this massive spike in early morning stimulation sets the stage for severe procrastination later in the day.
It sets the trap.
To explain exactly how this works, we need to break down a concept from the book called the wavelength gap. This concept completely shifted how I view my own work habits.
The wavelength gap is such an elegant way to visualize cognitive transition costs.
Walk us through it.
Okay, imagine human stimulation as operating on different wavelengths or frequencies, similar to a radio or sound waves. When you are engaging in highly stimulating activities like watching fast-paced, highly edited videos or getting into a heated political debate on a social platform, your brain is operating on a very high stimulation wavelength.
Makes sense.
Your dopamine system is firing rapidly, your receptors are flooded, and your attention is bouncing every few seconds.
Okay, now contrast that with the tasks you actually need to do to advance your life. Let's say you need to write a detailed, thoughtful analysis for work.
Or you need to study a dense textbook for a medical exam.
Or you want to sit down and write a chapter of a novel. Those tasks inherently exist on a much lower, slower stimulation wavelength.
They require quiet, sustained focus. They demand that you hold a single thought in your head for minutes or hours. They do not offer immediate flashy rewards, red notifications, or variable surprises every 3 seconds.
And the problem isn't that writing the report is inherently a terrible, painful activity. The problem is the massive gap between the high stimulation state you are currently in because you just spent 40 minutes on TikTok and the low stimulation state required by the work task.
Exactly. There is zero overlap between these two wavelengths.
Zero.
The gap between your current high level of stimulation and the lower level required for the difficult task is the exact space where procrastination breeds.
That is where it lives.
Because your receptors are currently downregulated and overwhelmed by the high stimulation activity, regular, meaningful tasks suddenly appear incredibly dull, tedious, and physically unappealing.
I like to think of it like going to a heavy metal concert.
Oh, this is a great analogy.
Right. Imagine you are in the front row of a Metallica concert. The bass is so loud it is vibrating your ribcage, the lights are flashing, the crowd is screaming, your auditory system is completely overwhelmed.
Totally maxed out.
Now imagine someone pulls you out of that crowd, shoves you into a soundproof room, hands you a pair of headphones, and asks you to listen to a very subtle, quiet, acoustic, classical guitar piece.
You wouldn't be able to hear it at all.
You couldn't hear the violins or the acoustic guitar. Your ears would still be ringing from the bass. And the classical music isn't bad. Your sensory baseline is just completely destroyed.
Just distorted.
You have to wait in silence, let the ringing subside, and let your eardrums adjust before the quiet task becomes engaging again. That ringing in your ears is the wavelength gap.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize the neurochemistry. Your dopamine receptors are ringing.
They really are.
And what makes this wavelength gap so difficult to cross is that when you are in this overstimulated state, your brain will actively lie to you to protect its dopamine supply.
It lies.
It does not want to go into the quiet room. It wants to stay at the concert Your overstimulated brain will deploy specific, devious mind tricks to keep you from doing the hard work.
Let's expose these mind tricks, because I think once you name them, you can catch yourself falling for them. Trick number one is the brain convincing you that returning to work will be easy.
Oh, this one is brutal.
I fall for this one constantly. I'll be working, I'll hit a slightly difficult patch in my writing, and I'll tell myself, I'll just take a 5-minute break to watch one video, and then I will easily transition back to writing.
And it is never just 5 minutes, is it?
Never.
And the transition is never easy. As the wavelength gap explains, transitioning from high to low stimulation requires a massive cognitive effort. Your mind pretends the transition will be seamless, masking the biological reality that the more you stimulate yourself during that break, the wider the gap becomes, and the harder the return journey to your work will be.
Wow. Okay, trick number two is habitual delaying. The classic, I'll just do it later.
This is the rationalization of procrastination. Your mind assesses the wavelength gap, feels the discomfort of the ringing in the ears, and rationalizes that there will be a better, easier time to do the task.
Like future me will want to do it.
Exactly. It tells you there is plenty of time this afternoon or tomorrow morning or next week. It removes the immediate urgency.
But the trap here is that tomorrow, your brain is going to play the exact same trick.
Every single day.
If you don't aggressively fight back against this narrative, constant postponement becomes a deeply ingrained neural habit. You blink, and suddenly 5 years have passed, and you are angry and resentful toward yourself for leaving your biggest life goals completely untouched.
Which leads directly into trick number 3, which is perhaps the most philosophically damaging, making you believe that excitement is the exact same thing as fulfillment.
Oof. This is a critical distinction that modern culture completely blurs.
It really does.
When you are engrossed in a highly stimulating activity, like playing a fast-paced video game or scrolling through an endless feed of gossip, your mind sells you the narrative that you are having fun, that this is enjoyable and you should just keep doing it.
But it is conflating shallow, fleeting excitement with deep, lasting fulfillment.
Big difference.
Excitement spikes your dopamine, gets your heart rate up, and provides a rush, but it leaves you empty the moment you turn the screen off. Fulfillment, on the other hand, comes from doing hard, meaningful things.
Things that matter.
It comes from overcoming challenges, building skills, and creating value. Fulfillment provides a quiet, lasting satisfaction. Your overstimulated brain deliberately confuses the two to keep you tethered to the cheap excitement.
That is so manipulative of our own brains. And finally, trick number 4, FOMO, the fear of missing out. Why is our brain so terrified of missing a random internet trend?
This actually traces back to our tribal ancestry. 10,000 years ago, if you missed out on crucial tribal gossip or information about where the herd was moving, you could die or be ostracized.
Oh, wow. So the stakes were literal life or death.
The brain treats social information as a survival metric. Today, your brain will convince you that digital opportunities are incredibly limited and urgent.
It tells you, if I don't check the news right now, I will miss a crucial world event and be uninformed. If I don't check social media, I will miss a joke and be left out of the cultural conversation.
It creates a totally artificial sense of scarcity to keep you tethered to the source of stimulation. It uses your ancient survival anxiety against you, even though, rationally, we know there will always be more events, more news, and more jokes in the future.
So bringing this all together, we have a brain that builds tolerance to stimulation, an environment designed to exploit that tolerance, a massive wavelength gap between our distractions and our goals, and a mind that actively lies to us to avoid the hard work.
It's quite the setup.
What does this mean for our daily strategy? It means that we absolutely cannot just rely on willpower.
No, willpower is not enough.
If you are actively in a state of overstimulation, sitting at your desk with your phone buzzing, your willpower is functionally useless against millions of years of evolutionary biology. You can't just force yourself to suddenly desire the boring task.
Willpower is a finite resource, and in a battle against a hijacked dopamine system, willpower will always eventually lose. We have to fundamentally change our internal and external environment.
We need to let the ringing in our ears subside.
We need to reset the baseline. We need a detox.
This is where we move from diagnosing the illness to administering the cure, designing your dopamine detox.
Let's do it.
Now, before we get into the tactical methods of the detox, there is a really important scientific disclaimer that we need to clarify so we are being accurate to the biology. The term dopamine detox has become a huge trend online, but scientifically speaking, the name is actually a bit of a misnomer, isn't it?
It is, yeah. The goal of this protocol is not to literally rid your brain of dopamine or lower your internal dopamine levels to zero.
That sounds dangerous.
That would be biologically disastrous. Dopamine is required for basic motor function, cognition, and living. Diseases like Parkinson's are characterized by a severe lack of dopamine. We do not want to eliminate the molecule.
So what are we actually detoxing from, if not the chemical itself?
We are detoxing from the external triggers.
The trigger.
We are drastically lowering our exposure to unnaturally high, engineered external stimulation. Remember the concept of tolerance and downregulation?
Like the callus.
Right. When you are constantly overstimulated, you need massive amounts of external stimuli just to get a normal baseline release of dopamine to feel okay. A detox removes that overwhelming external noise.
Giving your brain a break.
By fasting from high-stimulation activities for a set period, you allow your brain's receptors to reset, upregulate, and return to their natural sensitive state.
And here's the magic of the detox protocol. Once your receptor baseline resets, you suddenly need much less stimulation to feel motivated.
Yeah.
The wavelength gap closes.
That's the goal.
Suddenly, a previously boring, tedious task like reading a dense textbook, organizing your finances, or writing a report actually becomes appealing and engaging. Why? Because your brain is no longer deafened by the heavy metal concert of the internet.
It can finally hear the quiet acoustic guitar.
And it finds the music beautiful.
It is entirely about restoring biological sensitivity. To achieve this, there are 3 distinct types of detoxes you can implement, ranging from extreme to moderate. Let's start with the most intense protocol, the 48-hour complete detox.
Okay, this one sounds terrifying to most modern people. Walk us through the rules of the 48-hour complete detox.
It is highly demanding, but incredibly effective for a hard reset. The premise is to eliminate most or all sources of engineered external stimulation for a total of 48 hours.
A full weekend.
This means absolutely no internet, no smartphones, no social media, no video games, no movies or television.
Wow.
Furthermore, it means removing highly stimulating chemical inputs. No alcohol, no recreational drugs, and crucially, no processed foods or added sugars.
No sugar.
Even music is restricted, perhaps allowing only purely ambient, non-lyrical relaxation music.
2 entire days with none of that. What on earth are you actually allowed to do with your time?
The allowed activities are purposefully designed to be extremely low stimulation. You are allowed to write in a physical journal, read a physical book, preferably nonfiction or philosophy, rather than a highly stimulating thriller.
Right, keep it calm.
You can engage in contemplative walking in nature, do light stretching or yoga, practice awareness exercises, and meditate. You are forcing your brain to process a trickle of stimulation rather than a fire hose.
It sounds incredibly daunting to turn your phone off for an entire weekend, but there is a comparison in the book that really puts this difficulty into perspective. Think about people who attend Vipassana silent meditation retreats.
Vipassana retreats are notoriously rigorous mental endurance tests.
Exactly. For 10 whole days, participants have to maintain noble silence. No talking to anyone, no gestures, not even making eye contact with another human being.
No eye contact.
No physical contact, no exercise beyond slow walking. No phones, no internet, absolutely no outside contact, and they can't even listen to music, read a book, or write in a journal to distract themselves.
It's intense.
10 days of existing entirely inside your own head with 0 external inputs, just observing your breath and your thoughts. When you compare a 48-hour break from YouTube and sugar where you can still talk to your family, go for a walk, and read a book to a 10-day silent Vipassana retreat where you can't even look someone in the eye, suddenly the 48-hour detox seems entirely manageable.
It certainly frames the challenge differently. It reminds us that humanity survived for millennia without constant digital input. Now, if 48 hours still feels too disruptive to your work or family life, there is the second type, the 24-hour detox.
How does the 24-hour version differ?
The protocol is exactly the same, removing all highly stimulating inputs, but it is condensed into a single day, typically a Saturday or Sunday.
Okay, so just one day.
It is slightly less effective because it can take a couple of days for your receptor sensitivity to fully upregulate and revert to its natural level, but it is highly accessible and provides a fantastic weekly reset to prevent extreme tolerance buildup.
And finally, there is the third type, the partial detox. I think this is the most sustainable approach for people who need their computers for their livelihood.
The partial detox is much less demanding on a daily basis, but it is designed to be maintained over a much longer period of time, perhaps months or indefinitely.
Indefinitely, okay.
This entails ruthlessly identifying and removing the single biggest source of behavioral distraction in your life. If you analyze your screen time and realize you spend 3 hours a day on YouTube, you block YouTube completely.
Just that one thing.
You remove that one specific open system that causes 80% of the damage, and you just keep it out of your life while allowing normal, moderate use of other tools.
What I find so compelling about this detox process isn't just the return of focus, it's the emotional clarity it provides.
Right.
By removing the constant deafening noise of stimulation, you finally give yourself the quiet necessary to actually look at your life and see the forest for the trees.
That is perhaps the most profound hidden benefit of the detox. When we are constantly busy and stimulated, we're often using that noise as an anesthetic.
An anesthetic to numb ourselves.
We use it to hide from unpleasant feelings, underlying anxieties, or scary truths about our relationships or careers. The quiet of the detox forces you to sit with yourself.
It provides the mental bandwidth necessary to identify underlying fears, to self-reflect on whether you are actually moving in the direction you want.
And to literally solve lingering life problems by thinking them through and writing them out on paper. You cannot navigate your life's direction while sprinting on a hamster wheel.
Okay, so we understand the biology, we understand the wavelength gap, and we understand the parameters of the 3 types of detoxes. Now let's get deeply practical.
Let's do it.
How do we actually execute this without just relying on raw, white-knuckled willpower, which we already established will fail? Let's break down the 3-step method for execution.
The methodology relies on intentional behavioral design. Step 1 is to identify. You need to make the invisible mental tug-of-war visible. Take a literal, physical sheet of paper and draw a line down the middle to create 2 columns.
Yeah, a physical piece of paper.
Label one cans and the other can'ts.
It seems simple, but writing it down physically makes it a contract. In the cans column, you write down the low stimulation activities you are explicitly allowing yourself during the detox. Going for a walk, journaling, reading a physical book, drinking water, cooking a healthy meal from scratch.
Right, the good stuff.
In the can'ts column, you write down your specific toxic behaviors. Checking emails, opening Instagram, eating sugary snacks, watching streaming video.
And once you have that list, we move to step 2, which is the core of behavioral design. Friction. This step embraces a fundamental, unavoidable truth about human nature. The mind is fundamentally lazy. It constantly seeks the path of least resistance to conserve energy.
Since we know the mind wants the easy path, we have to use this laziness to our advantage. We must architect our environment so that the bad habits are incredibly difficult to perform and the good habits are incredibly easy.
Precisely.
We add friction to the bad and reduce friction for the good.
You look at your can'ts list, and you systematically architect friction into every single one of those activities. If your smartphone is your biggest distraction, simply leaving it on your desk face down and trying to ignore it is a terrible strategy.
Because it's still right there.
That requires constant willpower. Instead, you add massive friction. You turn off all notifications, you put it on airplane mode, or better yet, you power the device completely off and physically place it in a drawer in another room.
The psychology of that is brilliant. If you feel the sudden urge to check social media, you have to stand up, walk to the other room, open the drawer, hold the power button, wait 30 seconds for the phone to boot up, and then navigate to the app.
It's a lot of steps.
That sheer physical effort and time delay introduces enough friction to break the unconscious habit loop. You wake up from the trance before the phone even turns on.
Exactly. And for digital environments where you must work, you use software to add friction. If a specific news site is your trap, use a website blocker.
Like those browser extensions.
Yeah, if YouTube pulls you down a rabbit hole, use an extension that explicitly hides the recommended videos sidebar and the comments section. You make the bad behavior mechanically difficult and visually unappealing.
Conversely, you look at your cans list and you completely remove friction. If you want to spend the detox reading more, don't leave the book tucked away on a high shelf in another room.
No, keep it close.
Leave it open on your desk, right next to your comfortable chair, with a pen resting on it. Make the path of least resistance lead directly to the positive behavior.
Step 3 is perhaps the most critical element for setting the tone of your daily life, both during and after the detox, the morning routine. We discussed earlier how reaching for the phone immediately throws you onto the hamster wheel.
Why is the brain so vulnerable in those first few minutes after waking up?
Well, when you transition from sleep to wakefulness, your brainwaves are shifting from delta and theta states into alpha and beta states. Your subconscious is highly impressionable, and your dopamine baseline is resetting for the day.
Oh, wow. So it's a very delicate state.
If you immediately flood that sensitive system with high-octane stimulation, emails, news, social media, you instantly widen the wavelength gap. You have lost the day before you even got out of bed.
So the absolute golden rule is starting the day with low stimulation. Do not, under any circumstances, check the phone first thing.
Leave it in airplane mode.
Instead, engage in activities that deepen your focus, ground your body, and do not hijack your reward centers.
A protective morning routine might include 10 minutes of meditation to train your focus, doing light stretching to connect with your physical body, writing down your top 3 specific goals for the day, or consciously practicing gratitude by writing down things you appreciate.
The goal is to start the day grounded, proactive, and intentional, rather than reactive, anxious, and overstimulated.
Exactly.
I want you, the listener, to pause and really evaluate your physical environment right now. What is the one open tab on your browser, or the one specific app on your home screen that you need to add friction to today?
Find it.
What is the one device you reach for every single morning that is throwing you onto the hamster wheel? Identify it and implement physical friction the moment this deep dive is over.
It's the single highest leverage action you can take. So let's look at the timeline. You complete your detox. You have successfully reset your receptor baseline. You wake up, you execute your low-stimulation morning routine, and you feel a profound sense of calm. The noise is gone. But how do you maintain this newly found calm?
Because life still happens.
How do you actually execute on the hard things without slowly sliding right back into the old habits?
The first piece of the maintenance puzzle is planning and prioritizing. When your brain is clear, you need to give it a specific target. But it's not about writing a massive, overwhelming to-do list of 50 minor chores.
That just creates anxiety.
It's about ruthless prioritization. You identify a maximum of 3 to 5 key tasks for the entire day.
And to discover which tasks truly matter, there is a focusing question that strips away all the illusion of productivity. If you are ever unsure what to work on, ask yourself, if I could complete only one task today before taking a month off, what would that task be?
I love that question because it immediately cuts through the busy work. It eliminates the urge to organize your inbox or color code your calendar.
It forces you to look at the one big, scary, needle-moving task that you've been avoiding.
Maybe it's drafting the proposal or having the difficult conversation. And because you've done the dopamine detox, that big, scary task is now much easier to tackle because your brain isn't screaming for a cheap distraction.
Once you identify that key task, you need to execute it safely. To do this, we must understand the critical structural difference between open systems and closed systems in our working environment.
Break this down because understanding this distinction completely changed how I set up my computer.
An open system is any application, device, or environment that provides a continuous, never-ending supply of external stimuli and variable pathways.
Like what?
The internet browser as a whole is an open system. Your email inbox is an open system. Social media platforms are open systems. There's no end to reach, no finished state, and an infinite number of hyperlinks to click that will derail your attention.
Okay.
Entering an open system early in your work session fundamentally ruins your focus.
Right, because the moment you open your email just to quickly check one detail, you are exposing yourself to landmines. You might see an urgent message from a colleague that completely shifts your emotional state.
Or a newsletter that takes you down a 30-minute rabbit hole.
The alternative, and the sanctuary for deep work, is the closed system.
Closed systems are contained environments that offer little to no room for distraction. They have a defined boundary. They force you to work on your task and only your task.
Give us some examples of closed systems.
Examples include a blank text document in full screen mode, a specific spreadsheet, a sketchbook, or a physical notebook. They are finite. They don't update with new, flashing information while you are looking at them.
And the secret to sustainable productivity is to aggressively start your working block inside a closed system. You open the document for the essay you are writing before you ever open a web browser.
Exactly. You do the hard, focused work in a contained environment for an hour before you ever expose your brain to the infinite, chaotic noise of the open system.
You protect your attention during its peak state. But even with good planning, a solid morning routine, and closed systems, the biological urge for quick dopamine doesn't just permanently disappear.
No, we're human.
To maintain a balanced state over the long term and prevent a severe relapse into overstimulation, we must actively cultivate opposing neurochemistry. We must cultivate what are known as the here and now neurotransmitters.
This is the biological counter-strategy. If dopamine is the molecule of more, the molecule of the hypothetical future, of endless anticipation, what are the molecules of the present?
To counter the frantic urge of dopamine, we need to actively seek out neurotransmitters that ground us in the present physical moment, specifically endorphins, oxytocin, and serotonin.
These chemicals regulate mood, make us feel calm, create feelings of bondedness, and provide a sense of deep well-being that doesn't require a constant escalation of stimuli.
How do we practically trigger these specific neurotransmitters in our daily lives without using screens?
The first method is everyday mindfulness. This isn't just about sitting on a meditation cushion. It's about bringing full sensory awareness to mundane tasks.
Mundane tasks.
Yeah, when you eat, eat slowly. Actually notice the complex flavor, temperature, and texture of your food instead of inhaling it while watching a video.
Oh, right.
Fully pay attention to the physical sensations of washing the dishes, the warmth of the water, the smell of the soap. You are forcing your brain to process the present physical reality, which boosts serotonin and grounds you.
The second activity is contemplative walking. And we have to distinguish this from how most people walk today. Contemplative walking does not mean walking while listening to a podcast on 2x speed and ruminating on your work problems.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Contemplative walking means leaving the phone behind. It means actually looking up at the architecture of the buildings or the shape of the clouds.
Getting out of your own head.
It means actively listening to the ambient sounds of the neighborhood. It's about taking your mind out of the hypothetical, anxiety-inducing future and forcing it to process the raw, unstructured sensory data of the exact present moment.
The third method is deep social interactions. This is the primary trigger for oxytocin, often referred to as the love hormone or bonding chemical. We are profoundly social creatures.
We need connection.
Sitting across from someone, looking them in the eye, and having a meaningful, distraction-free conversation creates a deep physiological sense of safety and connection. It is a powerful, stabilizing antidote to the isolated, frantic, comparative scrolling of social media.
And finally, there is an activity that might be the absolute most difficult challenge of all for the modern, hyper-connected individual.
Yeah.
Consciously practicing boredom.
Okay, I have to push back here because practicing boredom sounds absolutely agonizing. You are suggesting I just sit there on purpose doing absolutely nothing.
Doing absolutely nothing.
My skin crawls just thinking about it. Why would I intentionally subject myself to that?
It sounds agonizing specifically because your tolerance is so high and your wavelength gap is so wide. That skin-crawling feeling is the symptom of the addiction to stimulation.
Ouch.
Which is exactly why practicing boredom is so biologically necessary. We must intentionally sit in silence with no specific intent, walk with no destination, sit on a park bench and stare at the trees without a book or a device.
The mind constantly screams for input.
It does. But when you practice boredom, you are engaging in exposure therapy. You are teaching your brain to tolerate a lack of stimulation without panicking.
Oh, I see.
You are proving to your nervous system that it does not need a constant feed of data to survive.
I see the mechanical logic now. It's the ultimate reset button. If you can train your nervous system to literally tolerate doing absolutely nothing, then suddenly writing a difficult 10-page essay doesn't look like psychological torture anymore.
Exactly.
Compared to sitting in a chair staring at a blank wall for an hour, writing an essay looks like a highly stimulating, profoundly engaging rescue mission. It completely shifts your baseline perspective.
It utilizes contrast to your advantage. By incorporating these grounding activities, mindfulness, contemplative walking, deep social bonding, and practice boredom, you build a sustainable, resilient mental system. You trade the frantic, exhausting pursuit of cheap dopamine for a grounded, sustainable state of focus.
This has been an absolutely incredible journey through the mechanics of our own minds. As we synthesize everything we've unpacked today, I think the true lasting value of understanding the dopamine detox is how it fundamentally reframes our daily struggles with productivity and focus.
It changes the whole narrative.
For so long, when we stared at that blank screen, when we failed to cross that invisible mental barrier and do the hard things, we just internalized a really damaging story. We told ourselves, I'm lazy, I lack discipline, I am fundamentally broken.
But the neuroscience offers a completely different, scientifically grounded, and deeply forgiving narrative. You aren't lazy. Your biology is functioning exactly as it evolved to function over millions of years. The problem is that you are chronically overstimulated by an environment specifically engineered by thousands of smart people to hijack your survival instincts.
By recognizing the wavelength gap, by ruthlessly adding friction to your bad habits, and by resetting your receptor baseline through a dedicated detox, you can step off the hamster wheel.
You really can.
You can trade that frantic, shallow, exhausting excitement for deep, calm, and lasting fulfillment.
It is a profoundly empowering realization. It moves the problem from an inescapable moral failing to an environmental and biological mismatch. A mismatch that you actually have the power and the tools to fix.
Exactly.
Which leaves us with a rather philosophical question to ponder as we step back into our daily lives.
Let's hear it.
If our modern attention economy essentially runs on keeping our dopamine receptors endlessly hijacked, keeping us clicking, buying, scrolling, and fearing is reclaiming your focus, unplugging the algorithms, and learning to sit in silence, the ultimate act of modern rebellion.
Reclaiming your own mind as an act of rebellion. Now that is a thought to linger on. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive on the book Cook.
It's been great.
We hope this extensive exploration has given you the biological understanding and the practical tools to break down that invisible mental barrier we talked about at the very beginning. If you found value in this conversation, make sure you subscribe to the Book Nook so you never miss an episode.
We truly appreciate you taking the time to learn, reflect, and grow with us.
And we want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us which book you'd like us to explore next. We read every single one. Until next time, stay focused and keep exploring.